It's 20 years ago this month that the announcement was made that Fusion Media was going to buy WCW. You obviously heavily involved, and we all know this. We all know the story that didn't come to fruition. But what are your memories of sort of that time where you were able to sort of put that announcement out there and be kind of like, we're gonna finally make these changes that you'd wanted to see, and you'd have more of a stake in it than you did before?
It was everything happened very quickly. If I remember the timeline correctly, WCW Turner brought me back sometime in January, February. I was back for a little while. It wasn't going to work out. I told Brad Siegel, who's the president of TNT, there's no way this is going to work. It was just WCW did not fit into the AOL Time Warner Turner profile. There were too many people that didn't want WCW to be a part of the company. And as such, we were always the square peg in the round hole. And that was true from the time I first began working as an announcer in WCW. The only person that really wanted WCW within the Turner company was Ted Turner himself. Everybody else was looking for ways to undermine it and pull the plug on it. And even after or during our success, now once we were kind of at the peak of our success, people felt the same way within Turner Broadcasting, but they acted differently. We at least pretended to try to support WCW. And in some cases did, but in most cases it was a facade. It wasn't real. But once things started going south, once things started getting difficult and borderline desperate for WCW, then kind of the wolves all came back out again, and it was an attack. And I said to Brad, clearly, I said, Brad, this company is more screwed up now than it's ever been because of the lack of support and a variety of other things. Why don't you consider selling it? Now, the first time I brought that up, and I'm not sure when it was, to be honest with you, my timelines get screwed up, but it was several months after they brought me back to work with Russo. And the first time I suggested it, Brad just looked at me and chuckled and laughed and didn't take me very seriously. And then about a month later, 6 weeks later, Brad called me and said, okay, Eric, were you serious? Because I said, let me try to find somebody to buy this company while it's still worth something. Because it's not going to work. It's going to go away. Either get a check for it, sell it, or it's going to implode. And that's when he chuckled and said, yeah, for sure, whatever, Eric, don't call us, we'll call you. And then about 6 weeks later, he called me. And he asked me if I was serious and if I thought I could put a deal together. And I said, yes. By the way, truth be known, I didn't have any idea how I was going to do it. I just said yes. And once the door was open, I decided I'm just going to go through it and see what happens. You never know what's on the other side till you get through the door.
Yeah.
So I said, sure, I can put a deal together. And as soon as he said, okay, come back to us, when you have something. The period of time that I just described to you, in my mind now, sitting here 20 years later, seems like it was only about a month. It was, in reality, it was probably closer to 4 to 6 months. But so much happened during that 4 to 6 month window that it's really hard to recall all of the feelings that I was having at the time. It starts out as excitement, right? Oh my God, I'm going to have a chance to buy WCW. Not me personally, but I'd be a part of the team. Mm-hmm. And what kind of opportunities does that create? You go through the what ifs. Well, what if we're able to do this? And what if we can do that? And what if we can do this? Very excited. But on the other side of that, at the same time, there was still a little bit of anxiety, I guess would be the right word to use, about it, because there were still a lot of people in WCW that weren't excited about me coming back. Mm-hmm. There were plenty that were, because they watched the success and they watched what I did firsthand, and in some cases worked very closely with me. Those people were very excited about me coming back. But there were also a group of people that weren't, because they had their own political agendas or their own career agenda. Not so much political, that makes it sound devious and nefarious, and I don't mean to do that. But they had their own goals that were in conflict with me coming back. So, and I knew that going in, and I wasn't looking forward to stepping back into that toxic type of political environment, but I knew eventually it would work itself out. So I was very excited on the one hand, and just couldn't wait to explore all the new opportunities that could have happened. But at the same time, had just come off a pretty tough run of 18 months about 18 months or 2 years in WCW, where for me personally, because of the politics on the corporate side, not on the wrestling side, on the corporate side, really took its toll on me emotionally, to a degree physically, because I just quit taking care of myself. And I was just in this state of mind where nothing really mattered other than trying to get through the next day. So it was joy and excitement and anxiety all mixed together.
And I mean, obviously it's 20 years later, so you might not remember all the specifics of it, but I mean, there was a lot of stuff that happened in WCW after you'd gone that people were going, oh my God, they did this angle, they did this happened. When you were sort of ready to take over or about to take over, were there a couple of things that you wanted to do specifically to change things or to make things better or to get fans back? Was there anything you were kind of set on that you were like, if I get it, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, to try and bring back that flavor from the 83 weeks era where people, loved WCW?
Kenny, that's a really good question. And yeah, the short answer is yes. And as you know, if you listen to 83 weeks, there's no such thing as a short answer with me. So I'll apologize in advance. But here's the beauty of the position that I was in that at that time, when it looked like we were going to be successful purchasing WCW. I had time to think about, okay, we're going to get this. We're going to buy this company. What do I want to do differently than not only what was going on in the 6 months or a year since I'd been there, but what have I learned? Because I learned a lot. And I've said this before. I'm not, too proud to say it or admit it. I was learning on the job. I was a good announcer. I was a good play-by-play person. I had a good basic understanding of the wrestling industry from the business side of the wrestling business. I had a lot of good qualifications, but I had no experience running the company. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of experience doing certain things, but I didn't have any experience at all actually running the company. So from 95, really 94 through 98 for me, for that 4-year period, that window was a real education. And I learned on the job. Some of the most important lessons I learned as a result of failure and mistakes. And I tell my kids to this day, or anybody that's, will listen to me, that you cannot be afraid to fail. You cannot be afraid to fail. In fact, and I'm not suggesting people embrace failure, but you can embrace the experience and really learn from it if you choose to. If you look at a mistake, if you look at a bad choice, if you look at a business failure and you're negative about it, you beat yourself up, whatever people do, try to drink the pain away, whatever the case may be. That's real failure because you haven't learned anything. But if you can learn from it and go, oh, okay, well, I'm either never going to do that again, or if I do that, here's how I'm going to do it differently, because now you have the experience of having been in the game. So most of my thought process during that period of time when it looked like we were going to actually acquire the company was, okay, to your point, Kenny, I told you I'd get to answering the question eventually. What are we going to do differently? What have I learned? What worked? What didn't work? More importantly, why didn't it work? Let's isolate as many of the reasons why whether it was a creative issue or a strategic issue or whatever, isolate the things that were identifiably failures or mistakes or poor choices, whatever you want to call them, and make sure we don't repeat those again. Let's just not do that again. Let's learn from that experience. So most of what I wanted to do was focus and fine tune on characters and story. And I've said this before, Kenny, when I first put my toe in the water on the creative side of things, it wasn't until 1995 I stayed as far away from creative as I could. I delegated that. I delegated it to Dusty Rhodes. I delegated it to Ric Flair. I delegated it to Kevin Sullivan. I delegated it to a group of other people who had more experience on the creative side of wrestling than I did. I knew what I didn't know. And I didn't want to be that guy who, yes, I was a president of the company, but I didn't want to come barging in the creative door and be an obstacle in a process that I didn't fully understand. I've seen that happen too many times. But in 95, I had to learn. I had to learn the creative process. And that learning experience, again, good ideas, bad ideas, all the in-between ideas, really helped me feel way more prepared to purchase the company and have a much better understanding of creative and characters than I did when I first took over the company as president or vice president. So it was all about cleaning up the stories. When I say cleaning them up, I mean structurally cleaning them up. So much of wrestling, boy, you caught me on a good day, Kenny. I'm so loaded up on caffeine. I'm going to keep you here all afternoon. So many of the creative process in WCW, and I think probably to this day in other companies, I won't mention names, is, let's throw it up against the wall and see if it sticks. Let's try it. Let's see if it works. Man, there's a much better way to create stories than that. And I know it's still happening today. I was a part of the process not too long ago. Mm-hmm. There's no real formula. It's all subjective opinion based on who's ever in the room at the moment when you're laying out an idea. And that's a horrible way to approach creative, in my opinion. You certainly don't do it in the movie industry. You don't do it in the book industry. You don't do it in the television industry, scripted and so forth. Even non-scripted has more structure and formula than what I've seen in wrestling, even recently. So my focus was on finding ways to clean up that creative process so the odds of a story being successful become much, much greater. Right now when you throw stories up against the wall and hope something sticks, you're lucky if 1 out of 20 actually work for more than a week or a month or 2 months. There's a better way to do it. And that's what I was focused on. What is the best formula to increase the odds of a story being more compelling? And that's what I was focused on. And then there was the practical side. There was the business side of things. How can we reduce our costs when it comes to producing television without being detrimental to the product overall? And looking for those solutions. But it was a combination of all that and more.